Hello everyone and welcome to the final exercise of session 1F in HSMA 6. So this is the Pandas exercise from the day. Now I'm going to kick off by importing Pandas for us. Now Pandas is, as you may remember, the package that is really good for working with tabular data, for data that looks like it might come from a Excel spreadsheet, something a bit like that. Now, I'm going to kick off by importing pandas, as I say, and I'm going to import pandas as PD. Now, in this case, it's chosen PD as the suggested autocomplete. So if I were to press enter now, it would just choose that autocomplete. Sometimes we don't want this, so if you don't want what it's suggesting, like you don't want to import pandas as pandas, for example, that's a bit pointless, then you can just make sure that you press a space at the end of this line and it will ignore the autocomplete suggestions. Now, why do we set it as PD? Well, it's just the kind of the standard for this particular package. A lot of the code examples, if not all of them that you see online, will expect you to be using PD as the alias for your pandas functions. What does that mean, an alias? Well, in this case, if we wanted to use the read CSV function of pandas, which we're going to do in just a second, if I've imported pandas as PD, then I can just type in PD read underscore CSV, and I can do whatever I want to within that. If I had not imported it as PD, then I'll just, every time I wanted to use a function from within the pandas library, I would have to type out pandas. Now, not the longest package name in the world, but still it saves a lot of time and typing across long scripts to be using just PD, and you will start to recognise that in lots of code. You just will know that PD always means pandas. So, CSV, we are importing the Titanic dataset CSV file into a pandas data frame. Now, I have opened up the exercise notebook, or the exercise folder even, for HSMA session 1F Python programming part 2 in my VS Code window, and I can see that actually that the looking at the level indentation here, if I close this back up so that all I've got is in my Explorer window, I can click in to open this up here, and it says 1F Python Programming Part 2. That's the folder I've currently got open, which I've done by going File, Open Folder, and then navigating to where I have saved this this repository, which I've downloaded from the HSMA GitHub. There are some earlier videos on how to do this if that's all sounding a bit like something you're not too sure about what I'm talking about. But in here I've got 1F Python Programming. You can see I've got some subfolders called Lecture Examples and Solutions, and I've got the exercise notebooks. Now at the same level of indentation, I also have these two CSV files, comma-separated value files, Titanic dataset and input data.csv. We're working with the Titanic dataset. If I were to click into this, you would see that actually all it is a large amount of text and numbers with some commas in between it. Now, CSV files are great because humans can read them and machines can read them. They're a really lightweight format for sending around bits of data without having to rely on people having a particular bit of software installed. They will work across Linux, Mac and Windows. They will not require you to have Excel installed, for example. They can be read by lots of things, whether that's a spreadsheet program or whether that is something like Python or R. Now, in this particular case, I am running an extension called, I believe it's Rainbow CSV. Ooh, Rainbow CSV. Now, that is quite often recommended the first time you try and load up a CSV file, but you can find that in the extension marketplace. That's just these little set of squares on the left-hand side in this bar here. That just makes it a little bit easier to read the down the column. So you can see actually everything in white here is a passenger ID. Everything in blue here is whether the passenger survived or not. In this case, 0 means they did not survive, 1 means they survived. We've got the P class, so class 1, 2 or 3. So in terms of, first class were the nicest cabins. Then we've got the passenger name, so Mr. Owen Harris Braund in this case, their gender or their recorded sex, their age as a float number, so that we've got, for example, 26.0 here, and so on and so forth. We've got a couple of other columns there available. Now, importing this file, you can see at the moment that the Titanic dataset, as I said, is at the same level as this other, as the exercise notebook. So if I were to actually open this up, for example, here I've got my HSMA exercises, I've got them in module 1. If I were to go into the Python file, for this particular, so the folder for this particular session, you can see that actually we've got Pandas Pop exercise 4 and Titanic dataset in the same folder. You know, this is what we are also seeing over here in our Explorer window in VS Code. What this means is that VS Code or Python, when we write our code, will understand that it needs to look in the same place as where our notebook is running from. So actually it will look around at any of the other files in this same folder like this and see what they're called. So if I now say pd read csv Titanic dataset.csv, and it's important that we put the file extension here .csv, otherwise it will not work. I now just need to choose my base kernel. In this case, I'm using Anaconda, which comes with Pandas installed into the base environment. If you're using pure Python, you will have to pip install Pandas before you can do this exercise. So what you can see is the Titanic dataset has loaded in successfully. If I were to leave off this CSV extension, what I would get is something along the lines of file not found error. If I scroll down, you can see that it says file not found error, no such file or directory, Titanic dataset. What that just means is basically I've looked in this folder for a file called Titanic dataset and I can't find it. So if we put the CSV back on, it will successfully find it. Now, if I were to instead have a folder called datasets and my Titanic dataset was in there instead, then if I try to run this file, then again, or this code cell even, then it will give me that file not found error again. It says I've looked around in this folder where Pandas Pop exercise 4, the notebook we're working in, is saved, and I can't find Titanic dataset.csv. We know it's just in a subfolder, one level down, so we can say datasets / Titanic dataset.csv. And this time, again, it's found it. It's gone, okay, you want me to look in datasets, the folder called datasets, and then you want me to look into the Titanic dataset.csv. Note that backslash probably won't work here. Yep, it doesn't like backslash. So this is just something to watch out for, particularly on Windows. If you're copying and pasting around file paths, it will often use a backslash, and that will cause problems. So you'll just need to swap out any backslashes with a / instead. Now, I'm going to pull this back to where it was originally saved. And this time, to show for comparison, I'm going to move this exercise into a subfolder. If it will let me, it might not let me because I've got it open. Nope, that's fine, it's worked. So this time, I'll show you in Windows Explorer. Titanic datasets, I'm going to get rid of this datasets folder because we're not using that anymore. So Titanic datasets is in a folder here. In a subfolder, we have exercise, and that's where our Pandas Pop exercise is now sitting. Now, if I were to run either of these, so here first I'm going to tell it to look inside the datasets folder, and it's going to tell me, well, there is no dataset subfolder, there's nothing, certainly nothing called Titanic dataset inside a subfolder called datasets. I can't find it. Again, if I try and tell it to look for Titanic dataset in this same folder, well, it accidentally just closed that one down there, so let me quickly get that one up again. So HSMA, that's not the right HSMA, sorry, I have far too many folders. So module 1, we're in this folder here, and yeah, you can see that inside here we have exercise 3, input data Titanic dataset, and inside here we have Pandas Pop exercise. So it's tried to look for a folder called datasets, can't find it, there isn't one there. In this case, it's tried to look inside this folder for just the file called Titanic dataset straight away, and again, it's not found it. However, we can tell it to go up one level by entering 2 dots, so just full stops here, and a /. This time when I run it, you can see it's worked, and that's because the 2 dots and the / basically say, please go up one level from where you are running this notebook file and look around in that folder. And again, you can see we've got Titanic dataset there. So that has all worked fine. Now, what do we want to do next? So the other thing I want to quickly show you is another way to import CSV files. If you are having an absolute nightmare and no matter what you're doing, this still just doesn't seem to be working for you, you can always head to the HSMA GitHub. You can search in repositories, so let's click repositories here. HSMA GitHub is just github.com/HSMA program, HSMA program that is. Now if I click into repositories, I'm going to search for 1F because I know that this is Python session 1F. I'm going to click through until I find the CSV file. So here you can see we've got Titanic dataset.csv. I'm then going to click into it and I'm going to click on raw. Now what this means, when I click raw, you can see that we just get something that looks a little bit like when we clicked into the CSV file previously. It's, just text and commas, etc. But what we're interested in is this file path at the top, this web address to the CSV file. So we can copy this and we can paste it in here. And if I run this again, it will go to the CSV file on the web, search for it, and use that particular version of the file. So this will always work as long as your GitHub isn't blocked by your organisation or as long as you have internet access. For now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put everything back to how it was previously, so we don't have this exercise subfolder, we just have the Titanic dataset and Pandas pop exercise in the same place as each other, and I can say that my data frame, I'm going to call this, what am I going to call this? I am going to call this just Titanic DF, I think. So DF is very common shorthand for data frame. That's what we call one of these, a Pandas data frame. And that is all we need to do for task 1.